First and foremost, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Jermaine, for being our main speaker tonight. And I also wanted to thank everyone last week for helping us make care kits and distributing them out in Skid Row. I want to thank everyone for their donations and sponsorship. And if you'd like to volunteer, please DM us, or if you'd like to make a donation, please check out our GoFundMe. So our speaker today is Jermaine Watts. And our segment is focused on him. He's a former member of the Unhoused community. He's been 7 years sober and has recovered through a spiritual transformation. And so today we really just want to hear your story, how you got to where you are and how you got to your recovery. And yeah, I'll hand it off to you and let you tell us about yourself.
All right, thank you. Well, like you said, my name is Jermaine Watts, and this is also my first IG Live, so thanks for having me. Um, just a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in South Central. I come from a life of gangs, a life of complete insanity. But before I start, how much time do I have?
Oh, you have about 30 to 45 minutes. So I'll definitely give you like a 5 minute warning before it ends.
Okay. Um, well, like I said, I was born and raised in South Central, and as far back as I can remember, I had these behavioral problems. And when I came to recovery, they spoke about a spiritual normality or a spiritual sickness, and I definitely identify with that because where my life ended up before my transformation, what I deemed or what I call the spiritual sickness took me there. So I was born and raised in South Central. My mother was on crack and mentally ill. Every adult in my family was on crack. I'm 43 years old, so I grew up in that era, like in the early 80s, early 90s. So gang banging was prevalent. Like when I walked outside, that's all I seen. Like all the blacks, all the youth were Crips and Bloods. All the Hispanics were Hispanic gang members, and violence was rapid. And the way I grew up, I idolized the violence in the streets and gang members because it made me feel superior to my family and my circumstances because I was always had this deep like shame and guilt towards my family because they were all drug addicts. And when I say drug addicts, I mean like low bottom, like no teeth in their mouth. You couldn't set your wallet down, nothing in the house of value. You could be left laying around or it would be stolen. Insane arguments all through the night, all times of the night, just grew up in chaos. So when I looked at gang members in my neighborhood, they seemed like powerful people because they had their chest out, their head up. You know, they had real influential people. So I just kind of gravitated toward that. And as I kind of grew more spiritually sick, as I like to say, I had these behavioral problems. So as far back as I can remember, third, fourth grade, already bullying, already cheating, already lying, already fighting, already stealing, already criminal in the making, already looking up to drug dealers and gang members in South Central. So by age 12, I was a gang member. By age 13, I was a hardcore gang member. And by age 14, I had already robbed and shot multiple people, already in and out of jail, already doing drugs, already like I smoking weed, drinking, smoking PCP, selling drugs, selling crack cocaine to entire neighborhood, including my own family.
That's really young.
That's really young. And sometimes I look at kids now and I can see them as innocent and I can see the innocence in their eyes. And I can't even fathom how I must have looked at that age. Because like I said, at 12, 13, I had already robbed and shot multiple people, was already going to jail, you know, in and out of juvenile halls. Um,
Is
but
that
even when I look,
how you ended up on the street essentially?
that's essentially how, because it'll all tie in.
Yeah.
Because, like I say, even though I seen, because my story is kind of complicated,
Mm-hmm.
not complicated, but it's a true South Central story. But in the end, I ended up homeless on Skid Row, living in the street, living like an animal in the end. Um, so just to speed it all up, because I don't want to take you through the whole roller coaster. I ended up going to prison at the early age of 18. I did 5 years the first time I went to prison. Um, and like I had a stint of in and out of prison for parole violations. And one time I met a guy through gang ties. And he took me to Skid Row the first time, but just as a drug dealer, as a gang member, not as a what I ended up being, which was a drug addict, a spiritually sick, mentally ill drug addict. And I also had some bouts with mental illness. Like my grandmother that raised me, that I told you about, she died. She passed away in 2001. And when she passed away, I had like a mental breakdown. I started hearing voices, seeing shadows, the whole 9 yards. Like I was on the verge of being schizophrenic. Um, so I was in and out of mental institutions for about a year, maybe 6 months, and I was able to kind of stabilize. And I went into a depression, and I kind of got back on my feet. I ended up in prison 2 more times from Skid Row. So how I ended up on Skid Row after my granny died. My granny raised me and my brother since I was 2 days old because my mother was mentally ill and on drugs. So when my grandmother passed, that was the end of my family situation. So from 2001, I was essentially on my own. And how I ended up on the street, like when I came in recovery, I ended up in a treatment center. I rose my hand out of fear and desperation to go back to a life of homelessness and incarceration. Honestly, I shared that I don't know nothing else. All I knew was the streets. All I knew was gangbanging. All I knew was crime. I didn't know nothing else. So essentially, that's pretty much how I ended up on Skid Row, because like I say, a friend of mine took me down there through, gang affiliation. I went down there as a gang member, drug dealer. Yeah. In the end, I ended up being a drug addict, homeless, living in the street, because I fell to that level of sadness and depression and loneliness, crippled that with a drug addiction. I didn't know how to save myself on Skid Row. And I had a violent streak also, because like I say, my story is not the typical, I lost my job and I had a good job and, I ended up getting, mixed in drugs. Like I never had a life before I ended up on Skid Row. Like I was a lifelong gang member, was a lifelong crip, a lifelong, career criminal.
How common do you think that is for somebody who like is on the streets versus, like you said, somebody who lost their job and ends up there? Like while you were out there, what was like more common in that community?
Just being honest, my viewpoint on that, I view the whole situation on Skid Row as a spiritual sickness or collective insanity, because the truth of the matter is when I was the first time I ended up on Skid Row, I was in the sober living. I relapsed, which meant I went downtown, I got loaded, and I kind of did that a few times, was able to go back to the sober living and try to, go back to work. And then I relapse again because I go downtown and I might go on like a 2-3 day run of smoking crack downtown and, running around hustling and doing this and that. Then I try to return to my old life. Then the day came where it wasn't no going back. So, and the first time I ended up on Skid Row, I don't know how long I was down there. Like, I lost complete track of time. Like, all days just missed together. It felt like it was 3 months, 3 or 4 months, but it could have been more, because for me, the kind of life I live on Skid Row, as a homeless drug addict, it was real chaotic. You know what I mean? It was a chaotic lifestyle for me. It was a life of complete insanity. So to answer your question, I see it as a spiritual sickness, because the truth is almost everybody that I was down there went in all those tent cities, and I was in and out of all those tent cities at all times of night. I was around all the way from 7th and Gladys to 6th and Gladys, all the way to 5th and Crocker to San Pedro. Everybody down there was either mentally ill or complete alcoholic or drug addict. And I work with alcoholics and drug addicts and sick people every day of my life. And normal people that lose their job don't say, I'm going to go on Skid Row and pitch a tent and I'm going to just live the rest of my life in the street. In my opinion, a normal person doesn't really do that. It's the spiritual sickness that devastates a person mentally and spiritually, and they can't find a way out of it. Because when I was on Skid Row, no matter how heartbroken I was, I couldn't free myself from that life of insanity. Because I share at a lot of meetings like AA, NA, CA meetings. I do all the fellowships, and a lot of times I can't sit here and tell you in honesty that I was okay with sleeping in a rat-infested tent and, defecating in the street and wiping myself with trash, eating when people like you come and feed me, because I was in those lines. I was in those lines where I hadn't ate for a week or I hadn't ate in God knows how long. And somebody would, so they feeding up the street and I would go get in the line and I would, eat when I was able to be fed, you know what I mean? And,
What
so
were some
I
of
can't,
like, oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead.
What were some of the stigmas that you faced while you were homeless, and
Well,
what do
because
you think like are false stigmas, yeah, that are out there?
that you choose that's where you want to be at, that you there, behind your own choices, which to a degree is true. But if a person is unconscious and sick inside, you don't even
Mm,
have a choice. Because if you become you cross the line of becoming a drug addict or alcoholic, you don't have a choice
yeah.
no more. Now you're a slave to addiction. You're a slave to, the voices in your head. You're a slave to insanity. So a lot of the stigma is that people think that you choose to be down there. And to a degree you do, because you can't take the full responsibility from a person as far as the life that they choose. But a lot of people like myself chose it unconsciously. Because when I was down there, I didn't know a way out.
Hmm.
When I came to recovery and I came to this new way of life, I had a third grade education. I had never had I didn't have no mom or daddy. I didn't never filled out a resume. I didn't have no kind of skills. I didn't know how to integrate myself back into society at all. So the greatest stigma that I might have passed, or experienced, is that you have a choice. When if you are the kind of person like me, you didn't really have a choice because you didn't know nothing else. Like all I knew was like I couldn't save myself. In the end, I got here to this new way of life through a deep surrender inside, and I had this shift in my thinking and shift in consciousness, and my path was directed, and I just
So
continuously choose to follow it.
what encouraged you to stay sober? Like what finally took for you?
Well, I went to prison from Skid Row 2 separate times. I've been to prison 3 times altogether. And two of
Mm,
those last times, 2 of my last prison terms was directly from Skid Row. For the
mm,
sale of a nickel rock to an undercover police, $17 in my pocket, they gave me 4 years. So I went to prison with a 4 year sentence. And when I'm in prison, I'm not like a programmer. I don't, because all I know is insanity. So I'm tied in all these politics. So I'm in jail, in prison, and that's a whole nother world, because that's a different kind of homelessness when you are in there but you don't know where you're going to go when you get out. You know what I mean? It
mm.
ain't nowhere to go. Like you getting out to Skid Row, literally. Like the bus lets you off on what's that, 7th and uh what's that, Industrial, or a little bit past Alameda, and it's like you get out
Oh,
to Skid Row. You know what I mean? So
that's
I got out
crazy.
and I ended up, after doing that 4 years, I did like almost 3 years. I went to Skid Row first night out, and repeated that whole cycle of insanity. You know what I mean? And I went back to prison for a similar case, the sale of a nickel rock. This time I didn't even sell the rock. Somebody else sold it, but it was me. And $70 in my pocket, a little more, small amount of cocaine. And they gave me an 8 year sentence that last time. So I went to prison with 8 years, and I surrendered. And not even while I was there, I was just remembering when I first got that time, I was saying to myself that, not only saying to myself, making a declaration to the universe that when I got out, I was going to change my life. I didn't know how though. I would say, homie, I'll get out. I'm
Mm.
John. I'm changing my life, but I didn't know how. So, and I made that same declaration for 5.5 years. My last prison term, was 5.5 years in prison, completely alone. Nobody sending me letters, nobody writing, no money on my books, no nothing. Just me in there,
That's
lost. You
tough.
know what I mean? But I would make this declaration that when I get out, I was changing my life. I was like, homie, when I get out, I'm changing my life. I'm done. You know what I mean? But I didn't know how. I didn't know how. And when you make that kind of declaration, the universe set all its machinery in motion. And my prison term was the worst term I had ever experienced. I had all this
Yeah.
internal conflict. I went to, what they call a SHU, which is a prison within the prison, several times.
Mm.
I had all of this. I had all of these incidents that just reinforced my declaration to change, on my decision. So,
What was that
and
first step to change once you got out?
well, I can't even say it was, like I say, it was more, I feel like where I'm at today
Yeah.
through it's through what I call what people call grace. Because I can't really say it's nothing that I did other than surrender through desperation and through fear. Because when I got out, I remember, but I can tell you this: while I was in prison, I had went to a program before called Cry Help in Hollywood. Cry Help was a drug and alcohol treatment center. And when I was in prison, I remember Cry Help, and the thought came to me. This intuitive thought came to me, said, "Hey, homie, you should try to get back in Cry Help." And I said, "Yeah, let me try to get back in Cry Help." And all I remembered about Cry Help was that it was ran by white people and they wanted to help you. That's all I remembered. I didn't remember nothing about 12 steps. I didn't remember nothing about recovery or nothing about, treat. All I remember is that they wanted to help you.
Yeah.
And so I wrote them a letter and they wrote me back and they said, here's our application to stay on our waiting list. You got to write us every 2 weeks. So I wrote Cry Help every 2 weeks for 2 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't a correspondence. Like, they didn't write back like, "Hey, we're looking forward to helping you." It was just me being diligent enough and mindful enough to write them and, tell them how desperately I wanted to get back in there. So when I got out, the next day on a Saturday, I walked in to Cry Help and I said, "My name is Jermaine. I'm an addict. I need help. If you can't help me get it here, help me get somewhere because I need help." And they sat me down. They looked at my file. They seen I had been writing them all that time. And they came out and they said, "Good news, Jermaine. We accepting you. We admit you right now." And when they said that, it was like I spiritually collapsed. And I made a new declaration that whatever they asked me to do, I was going to do it from my heart. And I was going to do it from my heart. Whatever assignment they gave me, I was going to do it from my heart. You know what I mean? That I wasn't going to squander this opportunity. And so I took that opportunity, and it was like almost I had tunnel vision. Because there's a lot of negative voices too that try to pull you in the other direction when you're in those kind of situations and circumstances and you're trying to better yourself, because you're in there and everybody in there is sick, you know what I mean? Spiritually sick, or, and the spiritual sickness transmute, or it ends up being a mentally ill, mentally sick, because it travels from your spirit to your mind, and your mind is sick, you know what I mean? And when your mind is sick, it's a recipe for disaster, because then you go on that self-destructive path and you end up on Skid Row. You know what I mean? Like I say, I was on Skid Row 2 separate stints, and I didn't know a way out. You know what I mean? And another stigma that people might think that everybody down there is bad. Now, when I say that everybody is on drugs, that's not saying that everybody is bad or fucked up people, because it's a lot of good people down there, but they have the spiritual sickness or the drug addiction, whatever you want to call it, the spiritual malady, alcoholism, addiction, they have all of these issues, or just severely mentally ill. And when a person is mentally ill, they self-medicate. Then a person can be severely schizophrenic, but he's smoking crack down there, or he's a severe alcoholic, you know what I mean? So it's all these different components, you know what I mean? So
were there people that tried to reach out to you, whether it was like a friend of some sort, family member?
Not really friends or family, because like I say, my grandmother raised me since I was 2 days old. Like I told you in the beginning of my story, my whole family was on drugs and gang members and in and out of prison. So I didn't have a lot of, even to this day, here I am 7 years sober, a whole new way of life. You know what I mean? And I still don't really communicate that much with my family. You know what I mean? Because it's like, they held most of my family held on to all the old beliefs. That smoking weed is cool, having drinks is cool, violence is, the go-to, might is right. People hold on to those beliefs, you know what I mean? And they go to their casket with those beliefs. But I let go of all those old beliefs. So even today, my, family situation isn't the best, but I feel connected to all people though. Like everywhere I go, I feel connected to other human beings, though, even though I'm a black ex-gang member, covered in tattoos, but even when I'm in these, these beautiful areas, because I work in real nice areas now, like the Agora Hills, Woodland Hills, Moore Park, or, Sherman Oaks, I always feel that I'm a part of civilization or humanity today. But back then, now people would come and try to reach out as far as like missionaries, like people like probably from your organization, Christian missionaries would come and say, "Hey, we can take you and you can come to our, program. So the help is there, but the
Yeah.
spiritual sickness wouldn't allow me to even accept help, because sometimes I felt so inside. I was so ashamed of myself because I ended up in this broken state, and it's the same state that destroyed my whole family. So it was like I didn't even want to be seen by regular people. When you end up so low and you end up in that kind of situation, sometimes you
Yeah.
don't even want to be seen by regular people. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like, because you feel so ashamed and you feel so lost inside and you're so hurt, you don't even want to be seen by regular people. One of my biggest fears was that I would see somebody from my family or somebody that I know, and they would
Mm-hmm.
see me, in this disheveled state of mind and being. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to be seen by, normal people, because that life and that place was just, it'll suck you in. Even when sometimes I drive through downtown and I can
Yeah.
still feel the pull of downtown, which is the pull of insanity, because there's something attractive about, there's some insane element of it that's
Mm-hmm.
attractive to someone like me that might be sick inside. And I can still feel the pull of it, because it's like, it's something insane about living like almost in an animalistic, barbaric kind of way. Because when I was living down there, I was almost living in a real primitive, animalistic kind of way, as far as the kind
Right.
of person that I am. The upbringing that I had, when I ended
Mm-hmm.
up down there, I became almost animalistic,
It was just you were just trying to, yeah, meet your
survival
basic
mode
instinct. Yeah.
almost. True, because it was
What
like, crippled with the addiction. It was like that was like what kept me going. What was your question?
what advice would you give people who want to help out, want to reach out to someone in that community? What's your advice on like approaching people and yeah, just trying to offer help?
The best thing I can offer, the best advice, because like I say, I work in a field similar to probably yours, not the exact same, but I work with drug
Mm,
addicts and alcoholics every day. And sometimes I have to give people that I work with who might lack empathy. You have to. What the best advice I can do is just to work on yourself spiritually, though, mentally, spiritually. I don't mean in a religious sense,
yeah.
but to be open to be a channel to help these people, because because you have to be right yourself before. It's almost like that quote from Gandhi: "Be the change that you want to see in the world." So
Mm,
the best advice that I can be is to be the change that you want to see. You know what I mean? So that's the best advice that I can be, because you can never transmit what you don't have. If you don't have
mm,
inner peace to give, you don't have inner love and inner, compassion to give, it's no way that you can transmit that to one person, let alone a whole community of
mm.
spiritually sick people. So that's the best advice that I can give. Even me now in this field of doing what I do, is that I continuously try to maintain my own level of consciousness. That way I can just kind of be a channel to spread love to people.
Can we talk
So,
a little bit about your spirituality and your spiritual transformation, how you got there, and yeah, what really influenced you?
well, when I first went to that program, Cry Help takes you to these 12-step meetings every day.
Mm,
And through this fear and desperation of not knowing what I was going to do, they would take us to all these meetings. And I would sit there and I would hear the different variations of the same story from behind the podium in all these different meetings. And it was these people saying, I was the guy asking for change on the corner. I was the guy who lost my whole family. I was the guy living in a tent. I was the guy who tore my whole family down. And I came here and I got a sponsor, and I started the 12-step process, and I started doing steps, and then my life got a little better, and I got a job, and then I decided to go to school, and I got a master's degree, and I got a bachelor's degree, and then I got a bachelor's, then I got a master's, and then I got a doctorate, and now I'm the owner of the company, and my kids went to college, and my life is just great, this and that. So in the 12 steps, the second step is that you come to believe that a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. So through hearing that, I came to believe that this could work for me. So without going too far into the 12-step process, because this is not a 12-step meeting, through the 12 steps, I had a spiritual awakening, white light variety. My whole life was transformed through the 12 steps. But after that, the 12 steps opened my spiritual eye to receive even deeper teachings. I can't even say deeper because the 12 steps was so deep, it revolutionized my whole life. Let's just say that I just continued to feed my mind with other spiritual teachings. Like when I was ready, I'm gonna say in two years, I kind of hit a wall because I still had this feeling of like an emptiness or loneliness. Even though I was always had this profound sense of gratitude for the direction that I was headed, because I believed so deeply in the promises of the 12-step program, and I had early on received most of them. So I believed so deeply in the spiritual promises of the 12-step program that I was just dedicated to it, to the, as far as waking up in the morning, reading all of the recovery literature, meditate. I would wake up 4:30, 4:50, 5 o'clock every morning, and I would read these different 12-step books, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 and 12. Then I started reading the Narcotics Anonymous basic text and the Living Clean and the How It Works and Why. I read all of this literature, but I kind of hit a wall in 2 years because I would have this feeling of like an emptiness or a loneliness that would come over me in waves, like this energy of like a loneliness or a sadness. I can't even really explain it. But in the right time, the right information or more teachings came to me. Like a book came, the teaching of Christ came to me, the direct teaching, like the Sermon on the Mount, and all of these different biblical texts came to me. Then I read the Tao Te Ching, that came to me. The Lao Tzu book, the Jiva came to me. Then other books like The Power of Now and A New Earth and The Stillness Speaks and As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, Life Above Life's Turmoil, The Heavenly Path. And all these different books came to me. Then even prosperity books came to me, like Think and Grow Rich and the 13 Principles to Success, and Dale Carnegie, How to Gain Friends. And then all these different books, like at the right time, came to me. Even books like Wayne Dyer, The Shift, and Your Erroneous Way. All these different books just came to me in the right time because I was open to it. And then I was able to step back and I can almost say to you here, it almost gave me the key to life, honestly, because my life is so different and so vastly different. But that's not to say that I don't have human struggles still, because sometimes my mind can also drag me from here to there at times. But my life, my whole life is different, completely different. Every area of my life is different, but not perfect, but different though. So,
you
and I
mentioned that you worked for like 3 sobriety centers. Can you talk a little bit about the 3 centers you work at and what you do now?
Yeah, right now I work at Creative Care in Woodland Hills. I also work at Sober District in Sherman Oaks, and I'm at one of my jobs right now, but I was able to kind of slip away for a little bit.
Yeah,
And this job is called, this is Fairview Sober Livings, which is in Agora Hills. But in 5 years, I worked at several places. Though I worked at Melrose Recovery, South Coast Behavioral Health, and what I do, I'm what they call a tech here. And a tech is just that I interact a lot with the clients. It's my job to like take the clients to meet and spend time with the clients, talk recovery to the clients. You know what I mean? Just interact with them on a personal level, but to also maintain safety and security at a facility, make sure clients aren't, sneaking drugs in or, disobeying rules and regulations. But and it's and I can go further in this career, but I'm where I'm supposed to be because I just so thoroughly enjoy working with the clients. You know what I mean? Because I've seen so many transformations, and I've had so many spiritual talks and so many different dialogues with so many different people over the past 5 years. And I've seen people transform. And then sometimes people come and they thank me, but to me it's like I can't even really take the credit because it wasn't me giving you a message. It was just me being somewhat of a channel to let the universe speak through me to you. And you only heard it because you was open to hear it. So sometimes I can't even take the credit for uh, help or being a channel for some people to hear a message of transformation. So yeah, I've been working in treatment for the last 5 years, and the type of treatment centers I work in, it's a variety of people. You can have somebody fresh from Skid Row from shooting dope coming in with abscesses all over them, beat up badly. And then on the flip side, you can have somebody, whose father is a celebrity, you know what I mean? And they come from the beautiful Beverly Hills, or they come from, some gated community, you know what I mean? So uh, I see a variety of people, from all walks of life here. And for some reason, not even for some reason, it's like I can connect with all these people. I always have such a good rapport with all of the different various personalities that come through these types of treatment centers. Because to come through here, you have to have private insurance. The treatment center I went through was a mixture. You can be like me, fresh out of prison, or you can be private pay. You can be a multimillionaire in there. My best friend was from the hills of Glendale, and his family was wealthy, and he's been my best friend for 7 years. So that's what I do today. That's what I spend my time at. Because I'm just so, even now, I'm like still dedicated to this work. Like all I do is work. A lot of people ask me, like, how you work so much? But it's like, when the spirit throw you the ball, you got to run with it. This is all I do is recovery. I don't do nothing else. I don't go to clubs and I don't hang out that much. I don't do all that. All I do is recovery. So, and even it can be difficult sometimes because I'm still human too. You know what I mean? And I was just in a funk earlier today. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you know, my my ego can get loud and try to reinvent a new story in my mind. So like I say, I just try to remain present. You know what I mean? And that's still my greatest advice to anybody working in this field is to try to remain present for yourself. And then the transmitting it to other people is automatic. So,
Do you think that working in sobriety has encouraged you to stay sober? Does that like go hand in hand for you?
well, with me, with the sobriety thing, honestly, early in recovery, the obsession or the thought to get loaded was lifted completely from me. Like in 7 years, I can't. That's like me having the thought to say I'm gonna just go back on Skid Row and sleep in a tent and live in the street. I felt the pull, but the thought to get loaded or to get high on anything has been lifted from me. Not only that, even to smoke cigarettes or vape has been lifted. I haven't smoked a cigarette or vaped in this whole time either. Not even vape. I don't vape. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't chew tobacco. I don't, I might have an energy drink every now and then. I do love coffee. I drink a lot of black coffee. Um, but I don't vape, I don't smoke cigarettes, or do I have an urge? I don't even have an urge to do it. But I have had, which is that same thought in disguise to involve myself in criminal activities, or to get like fast money or to cheat every now and then. I have had struggles with that. I'm not even gonna say struggles. I'm gonna just say serious thoughts to go back in that direction. But I let go of those beliefs too. In 7 years, I haven't robbed nobody. I haven't sold no crack. I haven't sold drugs. I haven't sold weed. I haven't been in a physical altercation. I haven't, owned a weapon of any kind,
That's
so,
amazing.
so, but what working in this field has given me is more of a sense of purpose and belonging and a sense of service to other human beings that I can't even really explain to you. Because when I think about the conversations that I've had and the people that I've spoke with and the human beings that I've encountered on this path, I get emotional just even thinking about it. So it has given me a sense of purpose, though, and a sense of empowerment, because it's given me the ability to empower other people. And it's not even me, it's them empowering themselves, because if they hear something from me, it's just because they was open enough to hear it. So it has given me that kind of sense. But the thought to get to relapse, it's almost like, because I equate getting high with so much pain and misery that I immediately recoil from that thought. Even the thought of like smoking weed or, having a casual drink, like I recoil from that because I experienced so much pain in my old life, not just as a result of drinking and getting loaded, but just the person that I was, even when I was sober.
Yeah.
You know, the feeling of the always consistent feeling of dread somewhere lurking in the back of my mind, or the feeling of low self-esteem, or so self-loathing somewhere in the back of my mind. Like, I remember that. And when and if a brief thought to smoke, or even when I see other people smoking weed, I equate that with so much pain and suffering that thought is immediately repelled from my mind. So in this day and age, I don't really have to. Now it's more about staying present to be disciplined in my thought life, to not let my mind drift toward low self-esteem or negative self-talk or even judgment toward other people. Because another
Right.
thing that you have to stay on guard against, even working in your field, is judgment against other people, pointing the finger at other people. Because it's easy to love those that love you, but it's a little bit more difficult to love those that might rebuke you. Because I'm even sure in your field, you might run into people that are negative and might even want to point the finger and might want to, be verbally or even physically disrespectful. And I encounter that here too. So I have to be vigilant with my own thought life, though, to not judge other people, or to look at a person like, oh, you woo, or to treat a person some kind of way because they was rude or disrespectful. You know what I mean? But to treat a person according to the essence of that human, because it's the essence of the human that makes that person a beautiful person, regardless of the what comes out of the person's mouth or their behavior. So with me, it's being more disciplined in my thought life, because I have what I call attack thoughts toward other people sometimes, but I have to remain vigilant. And even here has helped me a lot with that, because, like I say, sometimes you encounter negative people, because you can have a person from Skid Row that's the most positive, positive, respectful person, and you can have the Beverly Hills person that's rude, disrespectful, and verbally abusive, or vice versa. You can have a Skid Row guy that's verbally abusive and even make possibly physically, or you can have a Beverly Hills guy that's the most respectful, humble person. You know what I mean? So you gotta. So it has helped me to be more present. You know what I mean, and see the best in all people. So, because you encounter all that here in this field, because I've been even attacked here, cursed out, fuck you, and this and that. It's like, so I have to, so I have to remain present, So, but no, I haven't had a real thought to go back to, and my life is, like I say, the person that I am. It's not what I have, because I have a lot, you know what I mean, in this new way. I didn't wear all of my jewelry and all that because I'm just kind of playing today, but I have a lot of material possessions that just come to me. People call it the law of attraction, so I got a lot of material possessions. But it's not that I don't want to lose. It's the person that I am. Because in this program and in this life, it's not about what you get. It's about who you become. It's the person that I am that I can't lose, though. So the thought to get loaded was lifted a long time ago. You know what I mean? So I don't have those urges.
I think that's very important for anyone who's trying to stay sober, or just in general, just trying to live life. I think it's important to stay true to yourself and to just understand yourself better too. Because you're right, we always, whether or not, whatever scenario you're working with, and you're always going to deal with difficult people one way or another, and you have to hold yourself accountable and really figure out how to work through that and work through any conflicts you see. And so it's I mean, I really like what you said. Jermaine, would you like to add on to the conversation, or do you have any last minute things to say?
Yeah, I'm always open to questions, always open to be of service to people. There was another point I was gonna make, and then I forgot.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh yeah, this is what I was gonna say, because I remember you was talking about people struggling with addiction or alcoholism, and my advice and my opinion is that you have to have some sort of spiritual practice. You know what I mean? And I don't mean religious, just a spiritual practice, because spirit. Uh, when I'm talking about spirit is not something that you can ever obtain because you already have it. You already are it. But you have to be able to look within yourself to find your own essence, though. You know what I mean? So that's why in the 12 steps, they have the fourth step, which is the moral searching, or fearless searching and moral inventory of yourself. The ability to write out your whole life and really be honest with yourself and take a look at your life, though. You know what I mean? A thorough, honest, fearless look at the person that you are. That way, you can separate yourself from your past or from your sex or from your behaviors, because you're not your behaviors.
Right.
That's just a manifestation of the insanity or the, spiritual sickness if you cross the road to being spiritually sick. So my advice to anybody struggling with that, you have to have some kind of spiritual practice. And what I mean by that is a continual looking within, a continual seeking and finding, and not nothing super mystical like you trying to find this higher power in a cloud or in the sky. You trying to find this within yourself. It's not in a book. It's not behind the sky. You might gain some information through the book, but it's not the actual book. You have to find it within yourself. And the perfect blueprint for me was the 12-step process. And I always suggest that, for an addict or an alcoholic or just a genuinely sick person, because a lot of times in the 12-step fellowship, they say, oh, she's a normie. You're a normal person. But there are no normal people, though. It's like you can be sick and never touch a drug or alcohol. We can say somebody like a Vegas shooter he's a normal person. He went and shot 60 people. He's a normal person. You know what I mean? But the spiritual sickness took him in a different way. You know what I mean? So I always suggest the 12 steps as a blueprint for transformation, because if you want to change and you don't know how to change, you need a blueprint. And the 12-step philosophy is what opened my spiritual eye. Now, I'm not saying that the 12 steps is the only way. I'm just saying it's a way. And that's the same thing with Christianity or Buddhism or Taoism or, Hinduism, whatever ism you got. You know what I mean? It's just a way. Whatever way works for you, but you need some kind of spiritual practice, and you have to have some sort of dedication to it, because a lot of times on this road, sometimes it get painful before it get better. That's why a lot of people turn away from transformation or, even a small amount of enlightenment, because it's like you hit this peak and it's great, and then you got to go into the valley, come back to a peak, back into a valley. You know what I mean? And sometimes in the valley it's painful. You know what I mean? So sometimes you got to stay dedicated to whatever spiritual practice you encounter, because sometimes it's difficult. Even with me, 7 years later, I experienced difficulties. I'm going through a small difficulty in my life right now. But what I do is that I just remain present. You know what I mean? And I try to turn within for the answer to come to me. So sometimes even a small meditation, listening to some meditation music, and try to go kind of beyond thinking and just let the thought come to you, and have some kind of faith or trust, because faith is just another word for trust. Because if you can align yourself with the universe, everything you need to come to you and fall in place. Everything. It might not come when you want it, or when you think that you need it, because you think you need it now. But for all you know, this is the perfect recipe for the life beyond your wildest dreams, even though it's painful. So sometimes transformation is painful. You know what I mean? Same thing if you wanted to work out your body and you wanted to get in shape physically. It's going to be a painful transition. It's going to hurt. You know what I mean? So it's the same philosophy for spiritual transformation. Sometimes it's painful because you'll experience loneliness. You might even experience betrayal. Like sometimes when you was talking about asking about family members, sometimes the family members are the exact ones that try to pull you down or try to, point out who you used to be or tell you what you should be doing. You know what I mean? And, tell you that you changed and all of this, and you start to, especially if you start to experience some prosperity, and then the outer circumstances start to morph and match your inner circumstance and the inner dialogue. Sometimes people don't like that, because it's not their fault. It just shines a spotlight on where they at in their life, because it makes them like, shit, I'm still here in the same fucking place. And this guy, he's, he got the new car and he's always smiling, and he got all this jewelry now. He think he this and that. He don't come around no more, and this and that. And all you doing is showing love or sending love subliminally, because sometimes you can't be in those situations. You can't be in the same place for your whole life with the same people, especially if it's a negative situation. So,
you
so
gotta
that's my
be
advice.
careful with like who you let enter into your life.
True.
Right.
True. True. And sometimes I talk about the law of attraction. Sometimes with this law of attraction, it attracts certain people, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it repels certain people. Even though sometimes it might repel people that you love. It might
Mm-hmm.
repel your old friends, even though you love them. You love these people, but through your spiritual transformation and attracting the right people, it repels certain people. So they start to talk negative maybe about you. They start to
Yeah.
maybe be disrespectful towards you. And it hurts you though, because you love this person.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you gotta recognize when it's the law that's
Yeah.
pushing these people away. You know what I mean? It might even be a relationship. It might be your boyfriend or your girlfriend whom you love. But the
Yeah.
person is becoming negative, combative, you know what I mean, argumentative, and you love the
Yeah.
person. But the law is repelling the person. So sometimes you got to recognize that too. You
Right.
know, when I say the law, it's just the spiritual law of cause and effect, or the law of attraction, as a lot of people have coined it or call it, you know, in this new life. So, you know, be prepared to experience some pain on this path of transformation, because you will experience some pain. It's not, and well, unless you have such a spiritual awakening where you're completely free of your ego and your mind. And I wasn't that fortunate. But I know that that's possible. Some people have such a
Yeah.
white light experience, they don't even have an ego no more. You become like Eckhart Tolle or somebody. Um, but I wasn't that fortunate to have that bright of an experience, you know, so I still have, you know, my bouts with my own mind.
Yeah.
So
I think we all
that's
do.
another point I like to make. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. It's an incredible story, and I really appreciate you sharing your spirituality with us too, and how you, yeah, just picked yourself up, and I like that you emphasize, being responsible for yourself and really helping yourself and getting out of your situation. I think that's a very powerful message.
Thanks for having me, and I
Yeah,
appreciate all the work that you guys doing. Maybe I'll get involved one day.
yeah,
I'm
please
just grateful
do.
to be a part of what you got going on. Thanks for having me, and thanks for listening. You know, I
Yeah.
appreciate it.